God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Tony,
Hey, what's up, man?
welcome. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Good to have you. How you been?
Good.
Good. So, I've met you, I don't know, 2 years ago. I was doing an H&I in Roseville. You were going through that program there, and then I seen you come to FFR and become part of the recovery community that we're a part in up here in Auburn, and I heard you speak, and especially recently, doing some devotionals at Faith Fueled Recovery, and you have a calling, you know what I mean? You have a passion, and you have a story, and I just wanted to get you on here and kind of get some of that story and talk to you and hear what you got, brother. So I'm grateful for you coming out, and so we'll just kind of start at the beginning. Where are you from originally?
So I grew up in Roseville.
Roseville.
Kind of back and forth between Roseville and Citrus Heights.
Okay.
Yeah, my mom was in Roseville, dad Citrus Heights, back and forth. Yeah.
Nice. And how was your upbringing out there? Yeah, both parents in the house or no?
So they divorced,
Okay.
and so my mom pretty much like did the bulk of raising me and my brother, older brother, that I looked up to. My dad, he's a welder, drag racing, welding, Harley riding,
Okay.
party animal type dude,
Yeah.
but one of them good old boys,
Yeah.
So he was in the picture, but like every other weekend, so my brother actually went to go stay with my dad. He was kind of too much for my mom to handle at the time. So
Okay.
I was kind of in Roseville with my mom and just looked up to my brother,
He's an older brother?
older brother. Yeah. By 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. And how would you describe your childhood?
So I would say, I was lost, I was a lost young dude. My mom worked a lot. Like I said, I looked up to my brother. He started getting into trouble, smoking weed, selling weed, partying, doing all the things. And I was just kind of lost and was looking for belonging, I think. Just looking to fit in,
Yeah.
looking for some attention,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think not having your dad in the picture, like, did you have a stepdad?
I did.
Okay.
I do have a stepdad. He came in. I was probably, right around the time, probably 12 or 13 years old.
Okay.
But yeah.
How's your relationship with him?
So back then, not real good. I mean,
Yeah.
I was a knucklehead,
Yeah.
super just disrespectful little kid to my mom. Just didn't have respect for authority or
Yeah.
love my loved ones.
Yeah. So do you think not having that relationship with your dad affected, like, having that identity issue, like reaching for, trying to figure out who you were and where you fit in, or where do you think that came from?
Yeah, I think so. My dad, he taught me how to like smash go-karts around and like do stuff like that. But like,
Yeah.
I feel like just having like a father to just put his arm around you, and like show you, life and like a spiritual, leader, and just being more present, right? Like just kind of like watching over me, my dad did the best he can. I don't want to like just tear him up,
No. I'm the same way. Like, my dad was around, and but he wasn't. Yeah, we had a strained relationship, and he worked a lot, and I kind of had the same issues where, like, I was reaching. I didn't really know what a man was or was supposed to be, you know? And like I didn't really look up to my father that way as like a representation of, okay, this is what a man is, and like this is what I am trying to be. You know what I mean? Like I knew that he had some struggles. You know, my dad was an addict when I was growing up, things like that. And he's a good man, like a solid man, worked his ass off, like, you know, is tough, you know, but he just, I don't know, it wasn't a role model for me. You know what I mean? And so for me, my role models were guys that I saw on TV, like, you know, rappers that I was listening to, sports guys, you know, commando type of dudes. Like that's, to me, is like what this image of a man was, you know, guys that had girls and drugs and money and guns and fast cars and all that. Like that's what was attractive to me. And that's what I was trying to do, you know? And so, I don't know, man, like, how would it have been different if, you know, our fathers were a representation that we wanted to follow? I don't know, because we're still influenced by society, right? And like we're still like you honestly, bro, you couldn't tell me shit back then. You know, it was like I was the way that I was from a pretty young age, you know, and I was attracted to these things. And you know, as young men and as teenagers, like you don't really want to hear what your parents got to say, or, you know, everybody's different, you know, some kids do, you know, some kids do fall right in line with what their parents are saying. Some kids do fall, you know, right in the same path as what their fathers do, you know, and become welders or become businessmen or whatever it is, you know what I mean? But I wasn't trying to hear all that, you know. I was trying to I had ambitions to do something different, you know, and it wasn't what my dad was doing, you know what I mean? But so was there addiction in your family or anything like that? Drug abuse, alcoholism?
Yeah. So my dad was a functioning addict though, you know, so when I was younger, I mean, I'd go and I'd find like little baggies of crystal. And I didn't know what they were, man. But my dad, so he was always, you know, he always worked though and was able to hold down a job, you know? Yeah. And so although like there was definitely addiction in my family, you know, my dad was a functioning addict. So he was able to hold that stuff down, you know?
That's a special breed, bro.
Man.
I could never do it, you know? It was just like, it became paramount to get and, you know, use more, you know. It was like it got in the way, jobs got in the way of drugs. You know what I mean? Eventually. And like I could get good jobs, bro, and I could like build my life up into a great place, you know, and like have everything I wanted, you know, and then drugs become paramount, right? And alcohol, and like that becomes everything else goes second, you know. And when you're living in that addiction, like it's all built on a facade, you know, and it's just going to crumble. And more power to those people that are able to, you know, use and hold down a job, because I just couldn't freaking do it. Whether I am like not showing up or, you know, calling in sick or just not being a good employee too. You know what I mean? I'm on the job drunk. You know what I mean? I used to roof drunk, bro. Like be on the roof drinking vodka all day long and smoking heroin on my lunch break. I remember like vomiting off the side of a roof, you know, like middle of the day. Just an idiot, dude. Like that's what my addiction is, you know, like there's no functioning. You know, you can't continue to do that very long, you know? Yeah,
what is a functioning addict, right? Is there such a thing,
Is there really such a thing? Yeah.
I feel like it's more of a curse than a blessing, you know?
Yeah.
It's more of a blessing for me not to be able to function right and hold anything down, because it makes me want to get my stuff together real quick, right?
Yeah.
There's no hiding it from me. I'm one of those addicts that like, it's apparent, you know.
Yeah, I know. And honestly, like, I think it is kind of a curse, you know. And I think I heard Theo Vaughn say this, or somebody on his show. He's like, I'm grateful that I'm not just kind of an alcoholic. You know what I mean? Like the type where it's like, I drink so much to where my life freaking sucks, you know, and like it becomes a problem, and I'm having issues in my relationships or having issues in my jobs, but it's not quite bad enough to where it's like I need to go to rehab and like really make a change, you know. There's a lot of those people that struggle with alcohol, that struggle with drugs, right? That are using it on the weekends, maybe here and there during the week. They're showing up hungover, like their performance is down. They're never really, chasing goals and ambitions because all of their free time they're spent loaded. You know what I mean? And that's a hard way to live, you know? Like, thankfully, I'm a hardcore drug addict where it's like, this is all I'm doing, you know? And I can get a job and for a little bit, but like I said, it never sticks because I'm solely focused until the wheels come off and I land up in jail or rehab. You know, that's the way it goes for me. But, so where did that journey of addiction start for you? How old were you when you first started using and stuff?
Yeah, probably 11.
11, yeah.
Or 11 or 12, started smoking cigarettes, your typical story,
Yeah.
Cigarettes, started drinking, smoking weed.
Older brother and all that factor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I started doing with my own friends as well,
Yeah.
Started real young,
Yeah. How was your relationship with God? Did you guys go to church? Were you brought up in a spiritual household or anything like that?
So not really, no. I mean, we didn't go to church. My mom was kind of like a Catholic,
Okay.
My first really encounter with God or with Christianity or something like that was in juvenile hall.
Yeah.
I started going to juvenile hall real young.
Okay.
Probably like 12, 13 years old.
Okay. For what?
My first crime was
pull this a little bit closer.
My first crime was breaking and entering, possession of stolen items, receiving stolen items, grand theft. And my best friend at the time was house sitting for his neighbors.
Okay.
And we were actually allowed to be over there. They even bought beer and had some weed and stuff. And I was like I said, 12 or 13 years old, and I was hanging out with some like 17, 18-year-old dudes. And but one of them just started stealing everything from the house. And
oh, no.
We kept the stuff in my closet. So, yeah, that's when it all began.
So it was like pretty obvious who did it. And yeah.
My best friend kind of told on us, and cops, Roseville PD shows up at my mom's house, and I got like over $500 worth of stolen items in my closet. Yeah. And grand theft.
So how was that experience going to juvenile hall?
It's funny that you said that because, I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but it was similar to the experience I had going to prison at 17. It was kind of, it was almost just as scary being 12, 13 years old going to juvenile hall as it is 17 years old going to prison. Yeah. But, because you just don't know what to expect, right?
Right.
You're a little kid, man.
Right. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's young.
Yeah.
And that was Placer County?
Placer County.
Yeah. So that obviously didn't straighten you out, right?
No.
Yeah. So how was your high school experience?
I never went to a
school. Okay.
Yeah, I went to YRC Youth Resource Center.
Yeah. So you're a troubled youth.
Yeah, troubled youth. Troubled youth. I grew up in juvenile hall.
Yeah.
So graduated from juvenile hall.
What do you think was the issue? Like what was causing these behavior problems? Have you worked through any of that? Have you kind of nailed down like this is kind of the reason I was acting out, or are you not sure what the change was?
It's kind of hard to put, my finger on it, but I will say kind of like what we were pointing to, like my father, my dad, and divorce, parents divorce. Divorce is tough,
Sure.
It's a I mean, our society, a lot of people get divorced, you know, but divorces are tough. And then, just not. I really, to be honest, haven't put my finger all the way on it. What like really spun me out of control, you know?
Yeah.
But I do remember not liking the way I felt. I mean, this is like 11, 12 years old, and then drugs and alcohol was a solution. I just remember that changing how I felt, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, we begin, it can be a slew of things, you know what I mean? It can start as not having a father figure in the house as a role model, right? Or that stability, you know, and we, as children, we have issues with that divorce, you know. Some of us feel guilty about it. Some of us have resentment towards our parents and, like, you know, act out that way. But then you start introducing drugs and alcohol to the situation, it becomes a whole different thing, you know? It's like, for me, I started to develop a relationship with drugs and alcohol and the culture behind it, right? Like I became part of like that group that was using in high school, that was selling, right? And that party crew, you know what I mean? And like, you're listening to the music, you're, you know, acting that way, whatever it is, like you become part of a culture behind drugs and alcohol, and then you're starting to get in trouble behind it, you know. You're starting to do all kinds of wild stuff, you know. I mean, I committed my first robbery, I was 14, you know. It's like, where does any of that come from? It came from that lifestyle, you know what I mean? It came from the drugs. It was a robbery behind drugs, you know, and it was like, because I thought it was cool, you know. It was like it was the whole culture behind, you know, drugs, right? The getting and using of more, right? And you know, I looked up to and like was fascinated by bank robbers and gangsters and that whole thing, you know. And I was listening to Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac, you know what I mean, and like the shit they're talking about was fascinating to a young white kid, you know, and it's captivating. And then we're watching movies and we're seeing it around us, you know, and it's like, okay. And then all of a sudden you're just involved in this lifestyle, you know, and then that lifestyle gets a hold of you, you know, and then all of a sudden you're in freaking juvenile hall, and then things get mixed up, you know, and you have a decision to make. Am I going to continue down this path or go this way, or what are you going to do now, you know? And if you don't have that correction, you know, then it can send you down a dark path pretty quick, right? And so how did the life of crime progress for you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty typical, right? I mean, so the thing about me though is like, man, like I always got caught for everything I did, right? Like a lot of us were doing dirt, you know. Yeah. But I just would get caught up for everything, man. I couldn't like spit wrong or like jaywalk, bro, without getting arrested, you know. You know, multiple times, you know, I've been released from juvenile hall and then rearrested the same day, you know, hours later, you know. But yeah, so started like trying to gang bang when I was young. On like North Highlands area, Antelope, North Highlands. I got a lot of family from North Highlands, and so like we'd kind of migrate from Roseville and like like I'm pretty mainly from Roseville, but like I was really out there gang banging. Like anybody from North Highlands knows me, you know. Yeah. And getting into some pretty crazy situations, you know. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't brag about this. I've done home invasions, you know. I've been in shootouts, you know. I've been in all kinds of stuff, selling a lot of drugs, you know. But Placer County sent me to prison at 17 years old for having like a half ounce of cocaine on me and selling it, you know. And then I had a battery charge, or like I had a battery with a GBI because some dudes got stomped out at a party and kind of left kind of bloody, you know. Yeah. And so they sent me to prison for that, man, because my rap sheet was it wasn't so bad, right? But like Thank God I didn't get caught up for some of the more heinous crimes that I committed.
Yeah.
But it was just so extensive. They were like,
yeah, you already had a history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost forgot. So they sent me away to boot camp, and I got kicked out of boot camp. And then they tried to send me to YA and give me another chance, So I did some boot camp time. I did like a year and a half from 15 to 16, 17 years old. It was just extensive. So they just got rid of me,
Yeah.
Tried me as an adult. Yeah.
Yeah. So how was that first prison experience, pulling up on the yard at 17?
Yeah, so since I went straight from juvenile hall, so they put me in the back. I'm in grays and blue Bob Barker uniform, in the back, to where they put like the PCs, protected custody, and so they thought like I had something going on with me, but I was just a juvenile. And then when we got to Tracy, they throw you in there with everybody. But yeah, definitely intimidating. I just remember going, hey man, like just in the back of that van, going, how did I get here? How did this happen? Like 17 years old on the way to prison right now, right? Like, because I went to prison before a lot of my other homeboys, and really young, man, really really young on the way to prison, just kind of. But you would think that was enough, right? But that wasn't enough to wake me up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where'd it go from there?
Yeah, so I did about a year in prison, got out. It's only out for a little bit before I violated again. I had my son when I was 17. So, but yeah, I ended up just violating again. Drugs, kind of. That's when it started. It turned into, some meth use, went from cocaine to started doing some meth and stuff like that. And I just couldn't ever stay clean, bro. I just couldn't ever stay out of the system, I think I might have been out for like five months or something. Was like the longest I've ever been out from the period of when I was started getting incarcerated to that season of my life being wrapped up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. So you get out and so let me ask you this. Did you have any ambition of like doing anything? Like
doing anything different?
Else, yeah. Like did you have like growing up, or did you have like any goals or like a trade that you wanted to do, or any type of career, sports, anything like that?
Not really, man. I was kind of hell bent,
Yeah.
I just wanted to gangbang and pull some females and whatever,
Yeah.
just be be somebody that people respected,
Yeah.
and looked up to, a lot of people have a lot of respect for me and looked up to me,
Yeah.
But
did you have anybody trying to steer you in the right direction at that age? Or were you just not trying to hear it, or what?
Not really, man.
Yeah.
I really didn't have anybody trying to. I mean, of course, my parents, my dad would show up. My dad would always come see me and stuff, but he was what I'm so grateful about my dad is that he would show up,
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't always have like the best words. He wasn't real great with his words, He didn't always have the best, inspirational speeches or, or the know-how, to be there for me. But he showed up, I love that because that's what God does. Sometimes He's just there,
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, it's a trip that I just didn't have anybody. People would come in and come into juvenile hall or like to county or into prison.
Yeah.
They do H&Is and stuff like that, or like you'd have chaplains and stuff like that. But other than that, I didn't really. I mean, besides my mom always trying to pull for me and always trying to get me help that I needed. But the truth of the matter is, my mom always did everything she could to try to like get me the help, man, that I needed, because I was off the hook. But the truth of the matter is, Blaine, nothing helped me, man, until I encountered God in prison, you know.
Amen.
That's the truth, you know, until I encountered real love and real belonging, and my life was changed. You know?
So walk me through that. How did that encounter happen?
Yeah, so I'll try to put it in a nutshell, but so back then they had something called an N number. It was a narcotics number that you're still going to prison, but you don't have a felon number. You have a narcotics number, an N number, and that's what they gave me. And so my girlfriend, who she was my first wife, but even before she was my first wife, she was pregnant with my daughter. So I get arrested, and she's pregnant. This is back in 2009, man, and so what had happened is that's when the recession happened, and so, but before that, they lost my paperwork in county jail, and I just wanted to get out to see my daughter be born. I had a son, I have a daughter on the way now, and I just wanted to see my daughter be born, and guys were coming back from coming out to court from CRC, from that prison that I was on my way to, and they were saying, "Hey, man, the program's 90 days." And I'm thinking I could get out to see my daughter be born, you know? And so I'm wanting to hurry up and get to CRC, get to the prison so I could do the 90-day program in parole to see my daughter be born. Well, they lost my paperwork in county jail. I ended up sitting in county jail for like 6 months, and I'm doing day-for-day dead time, because until you're sitting in that program in CRC, it's a SAP program, substance abuse program. Until you're sitting in that program, you're not getting any closer to going home, right? But they lose my paperwork, so I'm sitting in county doing day-for-day dead time with my pregnant girlfriend on the streets, right? That has my daughter on the way, and I finally have to go back out to court. And then I finally get to CRC, and they shut the program down. So nobody's going nowhere. You said you've been at county, right, Blaine? Mm-hmm. Have you ever did day for day dead time?
No.
Usually it counts for a couple days, right? One day counts for two.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in jail, bro, and then in prison doing dead time. It's not even counting for nothing.
Yeah.
I don't have an out date.
You're wasting time.
I don't have an out date.
Yeah.
I don't have none of that. There's not even a program open for me to go into to parole, because that's how this N number works. And so, bro, in my brokenness, for once in my life, this crazy, careless, selfish dude, bro, you know, running around gang banging, running around just cheating on everybody and everything. And, you know, bro, for once in my life, I was broken. I was broken, man, and I felt like I was in a tunnel, a dark, dark tunnel, and there was no light at the end of it, you know. And God was putting, you know, people around my life, you know, around me in there. We were doing Bible studies and stuff, and I finally hit mainline, and there's like a prayer circle going around, oblong shaped prayer circle right at the foot of my rack, you know, when I hit mainline. And God just started to do something in me, man. I stopped running around, getting in trouble, getting tattoos in there, and you know, I started to surrender my life, you know.
And how old were you?
I was that was my last term. I was about 20, 21. That was 2010. My daughter was born when I was sitting in reception. So my daughter's 14 years old now, and I'm 14 years old spiritually, you know, in the spirit, because that's when I turned it around, bro. Yeah.
What do you think it is about that brokenness, you know, that brings us closer to God, or that, you know, that makes us want to reach out, and, you know, like that draw, you know, it's like we feel that pull, we feel, you know, I know for me, it was like, I knew God was always there, you know, it was like, and I just wasn't ready, you know,
Yeah.
And until I was completely broken, you know, and had lost everything, and was, you know, was stripped all the way down, you know, and then was humbled enough to accept that, to accept that I wasn't in control, and to accept that I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. And when I'm trying to control things, I just wreck, and my life was a disaster. And in that brokenness, in reaching out to God, it was just like, I just felt like he was always there. It was like a father just being like, it's okay. It's okay. Like all the pain, all the bad decisions that we make, like it's all okay, and you're going to be okay. Like there's that comfort that we feel in reaching out to God and accepting his love, and like he's there at the door, right? And it's up for us to open that door to him. And he's just a forgiving and loving, merciful, full of grace and mercy, puts his hand on your heart like it's okay, this is the way now, right? And just a steady, loving father, is what that felt like to me. And I always try to wrap my head around like, what is it about the brokenness that, not that he seeks in us, but that brings us to him? You have any reflection on that?
Yeah. I mean, where brokenness is, right? It's the absence of pride, right? It's the absence of self-sufficiency, right? I mean, the best man is still a man at best, Yeah. And I mean, we used to say, my best thinking gets me in handcuffs. This is where my best thinking got me.
Yeah.
And Jesus said something. He said, "Blessed is the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom." And I feel like addicts, we just have a loophole right into that because we're aware of our brokenness, and God he resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. It says, therefore, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, right? If God is who we say God is, who God says he is, right? He spoke this world into existence, right? He's a little bit smarter than we are. Yeah. He's a little bit stronger than we are, and I'm being facetious, Yeah. I mean, so why not humble ourselves, into this mighty God, that we have even a hard time sometimes putting our faith and trust in, Yeah. And it's like, something, this desperation, bro, and this brokenness, bro. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just aware of my brokenness still, even unto this day. And it's just the absence of pride. It's the absence of self-sufficiency, and God could really, I always say you gotta come to the end of yourself before you could come to the beginning of God. And God, you're never gonna know God is all you need until God is all you have.
Yeah.
So
no, it's a good point.
A couple of
and that it's that humility, and like I think realizing that you're not it.
Right.
You're not God.
Yeah.
As much as we want to play God and try to control things and try to control our environment. And, we are powerful, and we are created in his image, and we are able to manifest, and like we have some pull, you know what I mean? Yeah. And we have free will, right? And that can create like a false illusion that we are like God, and we can also harness some of that dark energy and like use that as creative energy and like make things happen, and it makes you feel powerful. And there's something about being stripped all the way down and humbled time and time again that's just like makes you want to reach out and be like, okay, I clearly don't know what's going on here.
We could probably all, and I can for sure, go back and mark when my life was going in a good trajectory, and on the way up, and experiencing joy and peace and happiness and blessings and good things and healing and, you know, all the good things of life that we want and desire, you know, is when I was humble, you know, and I was, you know, I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So were you introduced to recovery around that time, or how did that journey look like?
So, oh yeah, you know, so actually if I back up, I mean, I was introduced to recovery at real young. I was on juvenile drug court. Juvenile drug court when I was probably like 14 years old. And all the kids were older than that, honestly, but we were mandated to go to like 5 meetings a week, you know, and get a court card signed, like real young, 14 years old, you know. And
what were your initial thoughts behind it? Or did anything stick? Did you hear anything, or was it just kind of like part of the process?
Part of the process, you know. I mean, in reflection, you know, like a lot of it was silly, and you know, it's all coming back to me now, man. You know, when you're that young and you're being taught, honestly, I just feel like this, man. When you're that young and you're being called an addict already, you know, you haven't even got a chance, right? I mean, you know, we're a little bit more seasoned in life, and yeah, like we got this propensity, you know, towards addiction for sure. You know, yeah, like today I definitely call myself an addict, of addict tendencies. But for a kid though, you know, a lost kid, you know, when you're stuck in a system like that, and you're just being bombarded with, you know, it almost reinforces the negative, right?
Yeah.
When you're being forced into these situations to where you can't understand spiritual principles yet, or you're a very rare child. You know, I think Jesus was the only one who was in the temple at 12 years old, you know, confounding the the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, you know. But like as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old being made to go into these meetings, you know, and just all of the negative being reinforced. And I feel like that's what happened with me. It just got reinforced, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And, you know, society can put you in a box that way, you know, and like tell you this is what you are, this is your issue, you know, and like create these paper ceilings for you, you know.
Exactly.
And we see it a lot in the inner cities, you know, with people of color and stuff like that. Like they're told that they're this, they're told that they're never going to be anything, they're told that they're doomed to, you know, go to prison and just reciprocate the same things that have happened to them, right? And it's baloney, dude. It doesn't have to be true, you know. But when you're told these things and you're brainwashed into these ideas, and you're told by the judge that you're an addict, and you're told by your family or whoever it is, like it's the young mind is impressionable, you know, and you'll start to believe those things. You know what I mean? You'll start to believe like, man, maybe I am doomed to this lifestyle. You know, maybe I'm not worthy, you know, maybe I am a piece of crap, you know, maybe I am just violent and a drug addict, whatever it is, you know. And we create these personas, you know, and those can be very detrimental long term, you know, because you'll grow into those things too, you know. So how did things change after that experience with God and at that time?
Yeah, man, I was so sick of, you know, being the dude that I was, you know, and I became so fearful for my daughter, you know. I remember a thought that I had when I was sitting there in prison was, if my daughter could talk, she would say, my daddy's in prison, you know. And I just became so fearful that she was going to completely grow up without a dad. And I was so far away from being the dad that I wanted to be to her and my son. That I felt like this God that just, I believe, revealed himself to me, touched my life, you know. And it was something better and stronger and realer than anything I've ever experienced, you know. I said, I'm surrendering my life, you know, to God, to this Jesus, you know. And I did, man. And I freaking turned my back on that lifestyle, and yeah, we know the story doesn't end there. I got out. I had almost. I feel like God told me, He said, you'll never be locked up again, because I was locked up my whole childhood, my whole life, up until that point. And I feel like God put this on my heart, and this is one of the true things that God spoke to me about, because I still have never been locked up, bro.
Nice.
I paroled in 2011. I got off parole in like 2013, and apologize about my phone.
That's right.
Yeah, man, I've never been locked up since. I've never been in a running with the law. I've had a ticket, a couple tickets. That's it, man.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that you even had the desire to, show up for your kids, and like be a father and, show them something different, because a lot of guys, they just don't give a crap, especially when we're lost in our addiction. Like, it's such a selfish and self-centered disease, like, I know for myself, I had a daughter pretty young too. I was 24, and it was like, I had the desire to be a good father to her, and I was already in my addiction when I had her, and just because you have the desire doesn't mean that you're stronger than that addiction.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that you're gonna be the man that you want to be, because that addiction is powerful, bro. As we know. And man, I fell short, and I continue to fall short, of my ideals, but I wanted to be this father, I wanted to be this man, right? But that addiction, it's so consuming, and like it makes us so self-centered, where we put the drugs first and we put ourselves first over everything else, and to where, I'm using my money towards drugs. My time is going towards drugs, the getting and using of more, right? And I'm not showing up for my daughter the way that I should be. I'm not showing up as a spouse the way that I should be, anything, right? I'm falling short of my ideals of what a man is, and that's part of what kept me sick too, was the guilt and shame of not living up to my own expectations as a man, like knowing that I should be at home with my child. Instead, I'm smoking heroin off a piece of foil in a parking lot in North Highlands. You know what I mean? And that hurts, it hurts. But we're powerless, bro. We become powerless to these drugs. And that's what that powerlessness looks like, is like wanting something different, but being incapable of changing, and like wanting to have a good life and wanting to show up for her and be a good man, but like just not capable of stopping, and choosing drugs and alcohol regardless of the consequences, and regardless of the way that it's negatively affecting your life, Yeah. It's a struggle, So when you hit the streets, you were on fire for God, or what? Where did you go from there?
On fire. I think let's see, I did a 90-day program. Back then we had like 90-day programs,
Yeah.
And Hope and Healing. I don't know if you're familiar with Hope.
I've heard that name, yeah.
Yeah, and so I just did 90, got out, went to my parents' house, but and then I married my first wife, and we had a big family, blended family, and yeah, I think that's when I started working, and just raising a family, family man, raising a family young though, in my 20s, we had 5 kids between the two of us, raising dang near teenagers, and then, serving God, we were back before FFR was FFR. It was Road to Recovery. And I used to help lead it. And before Road to Recovery, it was Celebrate Recovery. So yeah, I was serving up there, sharing my testimony, kind of on the leadership team. What was I doing? I had another home group going. I was going into juvenile hall. I got into Sacramento County Juvenile Hall. So, God was using me, bought a house, just, all the good things of life. And then eventually I did open the door to relapse,
And what did that look like? What was that process? Like where did the fall start? What were the steps that brought you in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I wasn't like really working much of a program,
Yeah.
Because, man, when God touched my life, and I'll just be transparent about this, I was like, man, like, God doesn't call me an addict, and doesn't say that nowhere in this book. And, like, God healed me, and there was a lot of healing, and there was a lot of deliverance, and there was a lot of freedom, I found a lot of freedom, but, the truth of the matter is that we're always a work in progress, bro, and if we're not humbling ourselves, and if we're not working a program, if we're not surrendering, right, if we're not trusting the process, if we're not moving forward and the foot's on the gas, and then we're going backwards. There's really you can't just stay idle in the middle of a river, right? You're either going to be paddling or you're going to be floating downstream. So, yeah, and it's the little things, it's the subtle things, right? It's the slow fades, right? It's a slow drift, right? Because it started with alcohol, and I remember after 9+ years, there was an Easter day at the family's house, and everybody was drinking, and my ex-wife, she was drinking most of that time. She was a heavy alcoholic, and I was sober, but I just kind of threw in the towel, and I poured me a glass of wine, bro. So I started with that glass of wine, and eventually just crept back into. It took about a year or two, but got back into meth. You know?
Were you in a program? Had you worked the steps, or were you more just like involved with the church, or
more just involved with the church? I did do some CR, some step work when I was incarcerated before I got out, but after that, so the home group that I have going on in my house right now, it's called Pathfinders. It's a 12-step Christ-centered meeting. And I would attend that, but I didn't have a sponsor, I wasn't sitting down working the steps. I wasn't working a program like that.
Yeah. Was it a conscious decision, like, to pick up that bottle and to, or did it just kind of happen? Or, I mean, were you like nervous about it? Or did you have any ideas like, man, this probably isn't a good idea, or was it just like whatever, like?
Yeah, it was like this. Yeah, no. So the thoughts in my head were like, yeah, this is probably not a good idea, but F it, Kind of just got to that point, I kind of knew. I didn't realize that I'd be stuck in a cycle of relapse for 5 years. You know.
Yeah, I know. It's the problem with addiction, is that it talks to us in our own voice, and especially you put some clean time together and you feel healed, right? Yeah. You feel like there's no way I can go back to that old way of life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. God has redeemed me. Like, I've been saved. I'm healed, Yeah. But the problem is once you put in, things change. Yeah. You are healed until you put in.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But once you put in, all bets are off.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it might take some time. It could take 5+ years.
Yeah.
You know, you might be okay for a while, bro. You might drink beer and be okay and like hold it together, you know, but it's a progressive illness, you know, and over time it always gets worse. It never gets any better, you know, and eventually, you know, when something is okay, then anything is okay under the right circumstances.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you might find yourself drunk and then you're in the wrong headspace or just partying in the right headspace. Somebody pulls out that bag, right? And all of a sudden, boom, you're loaded.
Yeah.
And then you're like, man, how did I get here? You know? And then you really get the F-its, you know, and you're just off and running.
Yeah.
You're right back where you left. 10 plus years later, you know, all of a sudden you're like you never left.
Right.
You know, and you're back trapped in that cycle of addiction and relapse. So how did that look like for you, and how did the fall go? Like how was like it started with that glass of wine at the party. How did it progress to, I mean, obviously things fell apart, right? You're no longer married to that woman.
Yeah.
Like that addiction put its hooks back into you. What did that process look like for you?
Yeah, it was rough, man. So trying to drink like the old days, you know. Yeah, trying to smoke weed. I don't even like weed, you know.
So do you feel like you just picked right back up, like you never stopped, or
No,
did it
really.
was there another progression of?
No, yeah, it was a progression, bro. Honestly, I never felt, it was never the same, honestly. You know, they say like a head full of recovery with a belly full of wine, whatever it is, you know, it's like a heart full of God, bro. Like, you know, being, you know, in addiction and using, like, it just never felt right, you know.
Yeah, you know you're doing the wrong thing.
You know you're doing the wrong thing, you know. Yeah, honestly, I'm trying to like recall, man. That was back in 2020, but yeah, it just progressed, you know. It progressed from alcohol to weed, and then coke. Kind of just like my childhood, you know. To keep it honest, to keep it real, you know.
So you started hanging out with people again that were using, or hanging out with old friends, or was it you and your old lady, or what?
Yeah, it was me and the old lady, but yeah, one of my old friends, man, they used to say something in juvenile drug court. They say if you go to a barber shop, 9 times out of 10, he said, eventually you're gonna get a haircut. And it's funny because I hit one of my old homeboys up to give me a haircut, and I didn't know he was partying hard with coke, you know. And so it started with that. I was doing a lot of coke, but coke's really expensive, you know. It doesn't get you as high as dope, so
Yeah.
you know. So that's how that went, man.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're back on meth.
Yeah, it wasn't like that. It was like here and there, you know, here and there. But it just started to, my relationship already was affected, you know. And honestly, you know, it wasn't even a lot of my using and stuff, because my using wasn't even really bad yet. My using got worse when after the divorce, you know. That's a whole like another situation, you know. But yeah, man, I mean, drugs and alcohol, it does destroy though, you know. And mine was, you know, blended family, kids, just trying to raise these kids, you know, and wife not having my back, and you know, and I just kind of got tired of it. Like it escalated one night, and I was actually sober, and I chose to leave. I got up and left, you know, but I just couldn't deal with it no more.
Yeah.
And then so after I left, though, it just got worse for me, on and off, you know. Been, you know, go through a few rehabs, and a lot of jobs, lost a lot of jobs. Just yeah, man, it's a cycle.
Yeah. And are you an IV user, or are you smoking meth, or what?
I smoke it.
Yeah.
Smoke it, snort it.
Yeah. So how was your conviction with God at that time? I mean, do you feel like you were leaning on him, or were you leaning on drugs? You know, like how did that feel? You know, because obviously you'd spent all this time, and you know, you'd been sober for a long time, and you know, you were involved with religious programs and the church and everything, right? Like, do you feel like, I don't know, like you weren't doing the things that you were taught? I mean, like, how was your relationship with God at that point?
Yeah, you know, I just, you know, it was back to that pride thing, you know. I mean, man, I didn't realize it, but I had a lot of pride, you know, and it was like, and God didn't come through, right? Like, I wanted him to change my wife, because even though I started a relapse, like, you know, like, I felt like my wife had more issues than me, for sure, you know.
Yeah.
That's how I felt, whatever, you know. I don't think God really looks at us like that, right?
Yeah.
That's the human judgment, but it was like, God, like, you know, God wasn't answering my prayers, you know, fast enough, and I just couldn't get no help. Or just, my wife didn't really have my back when it came to some of the kids, you know, and so, but not really leaning on God, you know. Definitely, God still never left me, you know. It's only by His grace, man, that I'm breathing today. You know, I have a lot of friends. All my close friends are dead, or one of my best friends is on death row in San Quentin, you know. I have a lot of homeboys that passed away, my closest friends, you know.
Yeah.
So God never left me, but, you know, in a sense, I did turn my back on Him, you know, and relapsing. There's a lot of shame.
Yeah.
A lot of shame that comes with that, you know.
So you went to a few different rehabs, and what did you learn through that process of relapse and getting back to the point where you're at now?
Man, I learned that, I just learned that, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen in me still, you know. A lot of just a lot of character defects, you know. It was so important for me to really take full responsibility, you know, of like my decisions, my actions, you know, my attitude, you know, take responsibility for my recovery, you know. Because we could sit here and say, you know, God healed me all we want, you know, but if you're not, because all the 12 steps they're all in the Word of God, they're all in the Bible, you know.
Yeah.
And so one way or another, if you're not practicing and walking those out, you know, that daily reprieve, you know, dealing with that discontent, that irritable, restless, and discontentment.
Yeah.
Because once we quit using, right? I mean, once we quit using, then we could start working on the real problems in us. So, just realizing, you know, just that I need to take responsibility for my stuff, you know.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah, no, that's a good point you just said, that once we get sober, then we could start, you know, figuring some stuff out. Because it was like, for me, and this is, you know, the difference between addicts, you know, and this is a differentiation that they make in Alcoholics Anonymous, is like the problem drinker from the real alcoholic, right? Mm-hmm. The problem drinker, you know, alcohol is the problem. And you take that alcohol away and they can function, you know, they can hold jobs, they can, you know, have normal relationships, they are in control of their money. You know, alcohol is the problem, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas for me, I'm the problem.
I'm the problem.
You know, I have issues, right? And drugs and alcohol are the solution to the way that I'm feeling. You know, to where it becomes a medicine, right? To where I'm reaching, it becomes a crutch, like an escape hatch. Like I'm using drugs and alcohol to change the way that I feel because I have this internal turmoil. Right? I got these problems, dude. And you take the drugs and alcohol away, and now I'm restless, irritable, and discontent because I still have these issues inside of me, you know, and the drugs and alcohol are helping me numb that stuff, right? But the problem is drugs and alcohol are also a problem, right? The things that I'm doing behind drugs and alcohol, the decisions that I'm making, you know, the issues that it's causing me in my day-to-day life, where they're no longer a valid solution to my problems. You know, like they have become a problem within themselves, and I have to find a different way to deal with these issues, you know. And once those are stripped, once the drugs and alcohol are stripped away, I'm still left with these things, you know, and I feel raw. Right, I feel raw to the touch. Like, you know, I'm very irritable, and you know, say the wrong things, and I'm going to take offense, and you know, I have this pain inside me that I haven't dealt with yet. You know what I mean? And that's why it's so critical to work these steps, right? And to like do an honest 4-step, and like you said, you know, find ownership in all of these issues. You know, because for me, it was like a light bulb went off when I worked that 4-step. You know, like I realized that I am actually the problem, right? Like I am the common denominator in all of these failed relationships. I'm the reason, you know, why all of these jobs didn't work out, all of these situations didn't work out. I'm the one committing these crimes. Like I did all of this stuff. You know what I mean? I'm the problem.
Right.
And it's easier for me.
It's not their fault, you know.
It's not their fault. But the thing is it's better to take responsibility for those things, because if you take responsibility, then you are also the solution. Right? If I can change myself, I can change my habits, I can change my behaviors, then I can work myself out of these situations, right? Whereas if you're the problem in my life, then you have power over me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't want to give you that power.
Right.
I want to have responsibility and power in my own life. You know what I mean? And so it's good to take that responsibility and to, you know, take that acceptance and put that on yourself, but you have to go somewhere from there, right? You have to, you know, ask God to, you know, remove these defects of character, you know what I mean? And come to terms and humbly ask him, you know, to do that. Right. And then seek forgiveness from other people, you know, and then continue to walk on this path and, you know, be connected to these programs and continue to follow Christ in our daily life. You know what I mean? And when we're wrong, we promptly admit it. Right. We continue this walk in our prayer and meditation, and then we help other people. Right. We're of service and pass this message along, you know, and the healing is in the steps, you know what I mean? The work of the healing is in the steps, but the healing comes from God. You know what I mean? Only God can save you. You know what I mean? And that's the truth. I don't hold the power within myself to heal myself of these afflictions. You know, God will give me the strength to do it. But in myself, I'm powerless. I'm powerless over this disease. I'm powerless to make the right decisions, you know. But when I align my will with God's will, then I'm in the flow, right? Then I'm in the stream, you know, and I don't feel like I'm fighting uphill all the time. You know what I mean? And when I'm walking in faith, right, and I'm living in his will, things start to work out. You know what I mean? If I'm actually in his will. You know what I mean? And then I'm able to find the strength and the conviction and the consistency and the desire to change. Right? You have to have the desire to change first. You know what I mean? You have to want something different. And it goes back to being humble and like realizing that you don't have the power. You know what I mean? But there is one that has all that power, and that's the creator of the universe, you know, and you have to align your will with his.
Yeah. I like what you said about, you know, like feeling like you're going upstream, right? Like that's a good sure sign in our recovery if we feel like, you know, because sometimes you just gotta get up those habits and procedures, right? You gotta wash, rinse, and repeat, right? But like, and sometimes you don't feel like doing that, and you gotta do that. But sometimes if it's just so difficult, because what should happen is right, if we are submitting and surrendering to the process, you know, to the process of recovery, right? I mean, things should start aligning, you know, sooner or later, you know, the dots should start to connect, you know?
Yeah.
And so when it's not, and I'm speaking to myself right now, you know, when it's like something is just, it's just like, feel like you're swimming upstream, you know, maybe we should check ourselves.
Yeah. No, yeah. You have to take an honest look at your program and like how you're living, you know what I mean? And are you really trusting God? You know what I mean? Are you really trusting the process?
Yeah.
You know, and for me, like, I had to be all in on this thing. You know what I mean? Because I had been stripped all the way down to where I was completely humbled and humiliated, and, you know, got on my knees before God and asked him to show me how to do this. Like, show me how to live clean and sober, because I don't know what I'm doing here. You know what I mean? I don't know how to live sober. I had spent so long living in addiction that just became who I was, right? And I had wrapped this whole identity around it and this whole lifestyle, right? And I became this addict, you know what I mean? And it was, like we were talking about, it was my coping mechanisms for everything, you know, from it was what I reached for in good times, it was what I reached for in bad times, right? And so I had to relearn how to live, dude. And I asked God to come into my life and show me that. And I had to be all in, because my fucking life is on the line, Tony.
Right.
That's the truth.
Right.
This is a life and death situation for me.
Right.
Like, I had burned all of the bridges. You know what I mean? I was handcuffed and shackled to a table. Like, I had nowhere else to go. Nobody was picking up the phone. I had lost custody of my child. I had lost my jobs. I had lost my vehicles. I had lost everything. I was stripped down and humiliated. And God was there for me. That was it, bro.
Yeah.
He was the only one there for me.
Yeah.
And he was there when I asked him to be there. And he had never left me. You know?
Yeah.
And that's the truth. And he's still there, you know, and he showed me that there's a way out, right? And he guided me into this program and said, you need to do the work.
Yeah.
I'm here. This is the path.
Yeah.
I'm going to illuminate the path for you.
Right.
But it's up to you to put the work in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and I bought in. I bought in. And I put the work in, and like, I had to change all of my habits. You know what I mean? Because I was so far lost in the darkness that I had to completely swing the pendulum to the other side and just like focus on this recovery and realize that I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't have the answers here. I don't know how to live sober. You know what I mean? And so I'm going to go to these meetings. I'm going to look at people that do know. And I'm going to ask them, like, okay, what are you doing here? And pay attention to how they're living. Pay attention to how they're acting in society. You know, how are they, you know, behaving in their marriages, on a job site, whatever it is. Like, mimic these winners' behavior. You know what I mean? And a lot of that I saw online too, because I was like seeking a mentor. You know what I mean? Like, who do I want to be? You know, I had lost myself in addiction, bro. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was. And so now it's like, okay, now I have a clean slate here. Like, I'm sober. I have an opportunity. And that's the thing, is like, if I can stay sober, I have an opportunity. If I can't stay sober, I don't have a chance, bro.
Right.
I can't give myself a chance if I don't stay clean and sober. And I have to build this new life on a foundation of recovery. On a sturdy foundation of recovery. I have to put recovery first in my life.
Yeah.
And I have to put Christ first in my recovery.
That's right.
That's just for me personally.
Yeah.
You know, for people new in recovery, you just need to find a higher power. You know, but I didn't come into recovery as a Christian. I came seeking God. And the more I sought God, the more I found Christ. You know, until I got to the point where I am now. But that has to be the foundation of your recovery, you know, and we have to put recovery as the foundation of our life.
Yeah.
Because if I can't stay sober, I can't have anything else, you know. And when I'm putting recovery first in my life and putting Christ first in my recovery and like really living that out, like really showing up in my recovery, really putting the work in day after day, like really building these habits in sobriety, you know, and really walking in God's will to the best of my ability, that's when we start to get into the flow of his will in our life.
Right.
When we're really walking in that faith, bro, like, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm just going to wake up and do the next right thing today.
Right.
One day at a time.
Right.
You know, and like, try not to get so overwhelmed by life because it's overwhelming. You know, just like we were talking about earlier, you know, as men, like, we have all these responsibilities and expectations, right? We got bills to pay. We got, you know, we have spouses, children, like, we have all this pressure from the outside, you know. It's easy to get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But that's where, like, walking in faith and like really walking hand in hand with God, especially early in recovery, bro, it's just you have to be tight with God, bro. Like, he has to be your rock.
Yeah.
And that's it, you know, and build your life off of that. And try to stay in prayer and meditation with him and conscious contact, right? Yeah. And try to stay hand in hand with him and make decisions based off of what you believe God's will to be in your life. Not on what you think Tony's will is, not on what you think your spouse's will is, or anybody else's. Like, you got to put God first in your decision making. Yeah. You know what I mean? And when you do that, it's going to work out the way that it's supposed to work out. Yeah. And that's the truth, is it's going to work out perfectly. And it might not be the way you think it's going to work out. It might not be the way you feel it should have worked out. Yeah. But it's going to work out the way it was supposed to work out. Because God's will prevails always. You know what I mean? And it's either going to be good or bad, but that's just how you feel about it. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's your...
Well, he's got a permissive will and he's got a desired will.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yep. But it's...
Well, two of the things, can I just share this? Because it was what you were just sharing on right now is, you know, this time around in rehab, two things that I heard that I just stuck onto my heart, bro. And I know you know these, but these two matched together is a good combo, right? It's the incomprehensible demoralization, right? That's where we end up.
Yeah.
And that gives us the gift of desperation, you know?
Yeah.
The gift of desperation, bro.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that gift this time around. Mm-hmm. God told me as well, he said, and not audibly, but just put it on my heart as I think and as I understand, right? It's like my healing and freedom is through the 12 steps, right? That is such a powerful tool that we get to walk through and work through, you know, that just guides us right through this healing and freedom process. Not that we don't ever have to, you know, continue to work a program, but, you know, you keep working those steps, you know.
Yeah.
And you will start to see some healing and some freedom in your life, you know.
Yeah.
So
you will have a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, you know, and then you just want to give it to other people, you know. Right. And that gift of desperation is real. You know, it is a gift, and that is where we get to that humility, right? Like where I'm so desperate that I'm willing to reach out to God and ask him to come into my life and show me how to do this, you know. The problem is, dude, it's easy to forget what that feels like. You know, it's like we start to get things back, right? We get our lives back. You know, we get the wife, we get the job, we get good standing, we get a vehicle, housing, all these things, and we forget what it feels like, dude. We forget what that incomprehensible demoralization felt like, you know, when you first got into rehab and whatever. And that's why we stay connected, right? That's why we continue to go to meetings and hear people share their story, and we help newcomers and hear their story, right? Because it helps us to remember those things. Because that addictive thinking it'll tell you that it won't be like that again. It's not that you're healed, right? That it's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna be the same way next time. That you can have a beer, right? You're not gonna end up in a jail cell. That's it, you know. That's the problem with that. But, you know, that's the blessing of this program, man, is that it helps us to stay connected that way, you know. So what's some advice that you would have to somebody that's new on this journey of recovery?
Yeah, I think you touched on it. You know, we've been touching on it the whole time, but I would just say, you know, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, right? Like, you know, what do they say? If you do what we do, you get what we have, you know? And it's like, you know, I would say, you know, our surroundings and who are we connected to? Because, you know, you look around, I mean, you know, you want to be a winner, man, hang with some winners, you know. It's important, you know. I'd say don't isolate. I'd say don't try to do it by yourself. I'd say humble yourself, soften your heart. I'd say reach out, ask for help, you know. It's not weakness to ask for help. It's actually strength and wisdom, you know. I would say, you know, it is life or death, you know. And so you do what you got, you know. It doesn't matter what it looks like, what it sounds like, you know what I'm saying? Screw all that, bro. Like you said, it's life or death, you know. And so ask for help, get help. Like, don't stay stuck. Like you're worth more than that, you know. You could have a great life, you know. You're worth something. You're valuable. You're powerful. You know what I'm saying? You are those things. Once you submit, you know what I'm saying, and realize and confess, you know, and admit our weaknesses, then that's actually strength, you know. Then power will come, then blessings will come, you know.
Amen. Yeah. What do you feel like the meaning of life is? Like what do you think we're doing here? Like what do you think the direction is? Like
You know, I don't have a full answer for that, obviously, but I think that I think we are relational, you know, creatures. You know, we were made for relationship. You know, we were made for love. You know, here's a quote I've heard: "God's gift, our life is God's gift to us, and what we do with it is our gift back to Him." You know. Yeah. So it's like, I want my life to be an offering. You know. Yeah. I want my life to be. I want to build up and not tear down. Right. I want to lift up and not crush. You know. Yeah, I want to. For me, life is it's trying to be the best version of myself, and fulfilling. You know what I'm saying, all of the callings or hats on my life as a husband, as a father. You know, as a son, as a friend, as a brother, as a brother in recovery. You know what I'm saying, and fulfilling those the best I can. You know, and yeah, just trying to make a difference in somebody's life, you know.
Yeah. Amen. What are some of the goals and the ambitions you got in the next 5 years? Like, where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself?
Yeah, man.
What do you want out of life?
Well, you know, I'm definitely, I'd consider myself in early recovery right now still. And, you know, I just want to continue to grow. I'm still working through character defects and personal growth, you know, and freedom in some areas with, you know, mentally, emotionally, you know. And just doing what God calls me to do, whether that's, you know, that's preaching somewhere, you know, sharing God's word. I just love God's word. I believe it is exactly that. It's, to me, it's the true source and power, you know, that changes our lives. And just trying to help and equip people, you know, just growing in a leadership role, you know, and yeah, that's just really that, but it kind of goes, you know, yeah, in all areas, growing in my leadership role as a leader, you know, trying to empower other leaders, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, you know, I'm grateful for you, bro. I'm grateful for, you know, having you in our lives up here, and you know, you're a powerful man, you know, and you have an anointing on you, and you know, I'm excited to see you blossom into that role, and to see what God can do through you, you know what I mean, and open the doors for other people, and pour out your blessings into our community. And you know, I'm grateful for you, and thanks for coming out. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
Appreciate you, bro.
Amen.
Amen.
Victorious we became, but never forgot where we came from. Life or death, not a game. We came to change the lane. Recovery addicts, that's the name. Give yourself a break, just one day at a time. You were born to shine, so live and let love be forever. My sister, my brother, don't give in. Please remember, the lie is dead. We do recover. Welcome home.